and trickling in, so we're going to give them about a minute, and then we will dive right in. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is PJ Kling. I'm the VP of Marketing here at NuVoodoo. We've got a lot to get through, so we'll dive right in here in a second. A couple business things here at the top, like always. If you have any questions, please chat them into Jake so that we can address them at the end of the presentation today. Also, we can't send out today's deck, but by signing up for the webinar today, you're going to get a recording in your inbox shortly after the conclusion of the event that will give you a chance to review any slides that you missed or that we didn't linger on long enough. The Ratings Prospect Study 19 was fielded in January 4th and 5th, interviewing 3,298 14 to 54-year-olds across all PPM markets. Like we always do, we weighted them for market and population size, so more interviews in Atlanta as opposed to Austin, for example. We do this study twice a year and like to take everyone through it because the industry is facing unprecedented challenges between a disruptive pandemic that's raging into its third year, increasing levels of competition, not just from the signals across the street, and exponential shifts in media habits. So you can kind of think of this presentation as an audio entertainment survival guide. Now, I'm part of a 7-person marketing team. We rely heavily on this data to help our clients reach and influence listeners, and more specifically, likely ratings respondents, which we'll talk about a lot here today. Things are constantly changing, which is the main reason why we do these studies every 6 months. And we promise no hard sells, but before I turn it over to Lee, I just want to quickly introduce you to something new for 2022. I'm excited to announce that NuVoodoo has launched a digital out-of-home media capability to our arsenal of marketing weapons. As the data you're about to see makes clear, listeners commuting to a job and working outside the home is where the Nielsen game is going to be won or lost this year. So, in addition to all of NuVoodoo's other direct marketing strategies, we now have the ability to place digital out-of-home ads in the same way that we buy targeted display and video ads on mobile devices, computers, connected TVs. So we're talking about everything from billboards and transit shelters to urban panels and street furniture, even targeted interior retail locations. We manage programmatic, provider-agnostic campaigns that help bolster a station's presence in key zip codes. We're focused on your target demo, especially during commuting and working hours. Plus, we geofence to retarget selectively. We can reach just the right kinds of listeners on their mobile phones after they've walked through or driven within the confines of the parameters that we establish around all out-of-home media. It's a major marketing best practice used by successful Fortune 500 consumer brands, something we're really proud to be able to offer stations as part of their integrated marketing campaigns. This, by the way, is not us just playing with a new toy with you as the guinea pig. We've brought aboard one of the most experienced out-of-home media traders in the country. She is former Clear Channel outdoor exec Andrea Perrick. She's on the team to expertly handle all out-of-home media buying for our clients. If you want to, you can reach out to me directly, pj@nuvoodoo.com. I'm glad to give you a one-on-one deep dive as a follow-up to today's session. Now, like our new out-of-home capability, everything we do here at NuVoodoo is data-driven. It's all about helping you reach and influence likely panelists and diary keepers as efficiently and effectively as possible. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our EVP of Research Analysis, Lee Jacobs, and Ratings Prospect Study number 19.
Thank you, PJ. So let's start with a review first of who are these ratings prospects, and second, why are they so important? Nielsen balances their samples for gender, age, and ethnicity, but not for things like marital status, presence of children, and household size. And these folks who model through our interview as likely to end up as ratings respondents, the ratings likelies, labeled here RPSES, vary strongly from the overall population. They are, for example, in these data, more likely to be married, even after we've rebalanced the demos correctly and rebalanced ethnicities and such. They are more likely to have children within their homes, and they're at least a bit more likely to come from larger households. They're also, frankly, more interested in radio. Across our sample, when we asked them how many days per week they use AM/FM radio, 40% of our entire sample said less than 1 day a week. 5 to 7 days a week across the total sample. In yellow here, 16% said 5 to 7 days, that daily kind of listener, where it's 24%, nearly a quarter of the RPSES ratings likelies, and 28% of them fall into that 3 to 4 day, almost daily kind of radio habit. And when we ask them how much time they think they spend listening to AM/FM radio on a daily basis, 36% of the ratings likelies say they listen an hour or more. We're going to break those people out separately and call them RPS 60s, at least 60 minutes, at least an hour a day. Heavy time spent listening. These are the people who can really move AQH around. And so I want to show you how things work across our entire sample of almost 3,300 respondents, ages 14 to 54. These are people who are already participating in an online survey that runs nearly 20 minutes. And when we line out for them what it would take for they and their family, their household, to be part of a Nielsen sample, 82% of them, over 4 in 5, say, no, I'm good, thanks very much. 18% end up as RPSES ratings likelies. And I want to call attention that 36% we saw on the last page, the ratings likelies who spend at least an hour a day with radio, that's 7% of this sample all told, and we labeled them as RPS 60s. Now, when we get to the bottom of the funnel, out of our almost 3,300 respondents, we asked them, what are the top 3 reasons you'd participate in the ratings? We're talking about 606 respondents here. And what they're faced with then is a big laundry list of reasons we've gotten from actual Nielsen respondents over the years why they participated. And we asked them to tell us their top 3 reasons. And what you see floating up to the top here is getting paid, thanks very much, a chance to win cash awards for carrying the device with you. And in fact, you'll see that cash prizes and qualifying for drawings, those are parts of the PPM experience. They have their very own website nationally that encourage them to take their meters out on days that Nielsen has shortfalls in sampling to try to stimulate sample. And what floats up to the top again and again and again, 19 times so far, is they get paid or they get cash and awards, that little something extra. And face it, the people who are then likely to stay in the panel longer are people who are influenceable by contesting and drawings. So, well, you'll see what happens as we go through this. As usual in these studies, ratings likelies are more likely to use radio, but they're also more likely to use DSPs, digital streaming providers like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Pandora, and they're more likely to use podcasts too. Now in that top bracket, I've got DSPs, AM/FM radio, and podcasts lined out there in colors ranging from yellow to a darker blue. And the generational splits we're talking about are Gen Z, 14 to 25s within this sample. There are marketers who define them slightly differently, but we see them as, in this sample, 14 to 25. The millennials, ages 26 to 41. And the old people in the sample don't touch baby boom at all anymore. Gen X goes clear up to age 57. So in this sample, Gen X is ages 42 to 54. So there in the top part of the panel, we've got total sample, Gen Z, millennials, and Gen Xers. And you'll see that in the wild, if you will, just about half of the Gen Zs, a little under 49%, say they use AM/FM radio on at least a weekly basis. There are different colors, mostly grays and pink and blue. Those are the RPSES ratings likelies, and then sub-filtered by Gen Z, Millennial, and Gen X. So that 49% of Gen Zs, when we end up with the small sliver of that sample who are likely to end up within a rating sample, now we're talking radio usage at about 61% on a weekly basis. I just showed you usage of podcasts and DSPs among ratings likely, so let's take a deeper dive into audio entertainment here in early 2022. Which of these types of audio entertainment do you think of as radio? 86% of our Gen X's in the dark olive color say AM/FM radio station. Sure, duh. 76%, about 3/4 of the millennials, say AM/FM radio stations. Gen Z, the 14 to 25s, 59%, bit over half, but 59%, and 52% of them think of Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Pandora, digital streaming providers as radio. And in fact, nearly half, 49% of the millennials think that way too. Sirius XM, sure, they often refer to that as satellite radio. Podcasts a bit lower, but you can see particularly among Gen Z and millennials, 18 and 17% think of, well, that's radio too. We wanted to ask them about devices. How many of each of these things do you have in your home? The numbers here represent the percentages who have at least one of them. TVs, sure, almost everybody's got a TV these days. Bluetooth speaker, colored in blue here. First time we've asked about it because we kept picking it up in qualitative interviews last year. So we thought we better include this and get our finger on the pulse of that. Well, it's a mammoth percentage. And among Gen Z and millennials, you're talking 86, 85%. It's nearly 3/4 of the Gen Xers. AM/FM radio in their homes drops to 73% across the total sample, about 2/3 of the Gen Zs, and around 3/4 among the millennials or Gen X. And smart speakers right there at 69%. Now, if I drill this down to the ratings likelies, things shift around a little bit, but basically what you'll see is these are better consumers of radio or audio entertainment. So guess what? They tend to have each of these devices at higher levels. 88% for Bluetooth speakers, 81% for AM/FM radios in their homes or smart speakers. Among that high TSL sliver of the RPSES ratings likelies, the RPS 60s, there we're talking about 91% for a radio at home and 91% for AM/FM radio at home and 90% for a Bluetooth speaker in their home. So at this point, all generations use DSPs more than radio each week, which best describes how often you use these different types of audio entertainment. These are weekly numbers. And across these demos, DSPs, they're on the left, 77% of the Gen Z or millennials, 65% of the Gen X. And for AM/FM radio, that's 64% apiece for millennials and Gen X. It's only a point better for DSPs. So we can call them tied, but it's a really close race at this point. And in fact, there's a lot of competition for audio apps. When we ask which of these audio apps do you use regularly, about half, 48% identified Spotify, YouTube Music, yep, that's an app, 41%, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Pandora, which used to be the leader in this category at 28%. And then you start to see the radio companies slide into this. iHeartRadio at 22%, SoundCloud, an AM/FM station app. We did our best to try to get them to imagine that app that they can install from one of the local AM/FM radio stations in their area. Sirius XM and Odyssey just ticking into the bottom of this screen at 14% overall. If we break it down generationally, it looks like this. Spotify, mammoth among the Gen Zs, and Pandora getting its relatively across the generations best numbers among the Gen Xers, a little bit less so for millennials, and it just drops off to nothing among the Gen Zs. For now, smart speakers have plateaued. We've been tracking this since back into 2017, and we were watching this stair step up. And about a year ago, I recall standing here looking at the numbers where we went from 60% in June of 2020 to 67% last January, when even with salaries cut and people laid off from work and staying home, they still spent money to do anything they could with home entertainment. So the relatively low purchase price for a smart speaker made sense. But now we're watching smart speakers kind of plateau there, 70% and 69% in this latest sample. But the thing that hasn't plateaued is using these things for what they are essentially, which is speakers. In the past week, how much time have you spent listening to any of these things on your smart speaker among the smart speaker owners within this sample? And you see, tracking it back to last June, we go up 20 points from 45 to 65% for DSPs and up 10 full points for FM and nearly that much for podcasts. We're making progress, but DSPs are getting there faster. Now, having a radio or a smart speaker in your home turns out to increase your radio TSL. The threshold here is set at least 30 minutes on a typical day. you'll see it's 34% across the total sample. But if you've got a radio in your home, that goes up 7 points to 41%. If you've got a smart speaker, and people are starting to figure out that they can use those, it's a matter of connecting the dots for them so that they know what they need to say to get that radio station, to get your brand on their smart speaker, we go from 34 to 38%. Now, it's the era of the connectable cord or Bluetooth car. Connected cars, particularly in this time where supply lines, supply chains are disrupted, so new cars are tough to come by, mostly trading well over MSRP at this point. So no big growth here for connected cars. Most, nearly, well over half those who are driving anything have a cord or Bluetooth kind of car or vehicle audio system where they can connect their smartphone using an aux cord or connecting on Bluetooth. A regular car radio, which just has the basic AM/FM function and maybe a cassette player, oh my gosh, or a CD player at 23%. You can see that grows to 32% among the older people in this sample, the Gen Xers who are 42 to 54. But that 13% across this sample who have a connected car will turn out to be important to us, because if you've got a connected car, or in fact one that you can connect your smartphone to using a cord or Bluetooth, that same number, trading at 30 minutes per day on a typical day listening to AM/FM radio, you'll see that AM/FM radio usage is lower compared to what we see for people who have one of those traditional kind of old style car radios. And if you're not sure why that might be, check this out, because among that little sliver of connected car owners, 402 of them, 13% of the sample, we said, agree, disagree, you're not sure how to program the presets for local AM/FM stations on your car audio system. Now, among the Gen Zs who have one of those connected car audio systems, 29%, a relatively manageable number, 57% among the millennials, and a whopping almost 3/4 of the Gen Xers say that, I'm not sure how I do that. I don't know how to program the preset for a local AM/FM station. Wow.
I'm willing to bet that every station represented here has a car dealer as a client, but have you sat down with those dealers and tried to get your station's apps preloaded onto every new car that leaves the lot? Or do you have how-to videos on your site to show your audience how to get your content on their new connected car? Knowing how big of a deal the commute is to radio success in 2022, we have to have the same commitment to this that we do in promoting our apps and how to listen to us on smart speakers as well.
And in fact, when we gave them the opportunity to agree or disagree, they'd listen more to radio stations they like if you advertised how to tune into the streaming version. That's 65% of the connected car owners and 57% of those who have a, if you will, connectable car. Now remember, across the total sample, 68% say they only listen to AM/FM stations when they're in the car. Chances are that's not really true, but it's how they think about it. It's where they're most aware that they are spending time with radio. How much time do you spend with each of these on a following day, on a typical day rather? At least 30 minutes. Among the RPSES ratings likelies, AM/FM radio goes from 34% overall to 54%, and podcasts now among these audio attuned ratings likelies go from 28% in the total sample to just over half at 51%. Using it at least 30 minutes on a typical day. And among those podcast listeners, most listen to more than one podcast. It's just 13% of weekly podcast users who say it's just one, just that one. And we gave them wording to try to suggest that if it was just, the New York Times Daily, for example, that it's the same thing each day, that counts as one. Many people, the plurality, say it's 2 or 3, and a healthy number, 41% overall, say if they listen to 4 podcasts or more. And when we ask them, what are you regularly doing while you're listening to podcasts? I was frankly knocked over by the number one answer here, not by a huge percentage, because in my head, it's more connected with, out for a run or a walk like it is for me, or working out. But in fact, across this total sample, 49% say while driving. Podcasts are finding their way into the car, and especially where there are connected cars involved. When we started doing ratings prospect studies over a decade ago, one of our obsessions was keeping track of social media platforms, and we've kept up that tracking and tried to stay responsive to changes in the digital space. So even allowing for seasonal adjustments, and you'll see some of these apps as we track back to January of 2020 seem to dip a little bit in our June. We go January and June each year, and you see they dip just a little bit in the June study, but then they tend to come back. Instagram up a little bit. TikTok rocked down a little bit from our June study in 2021 to now 40 to 39%, but that's up sharply from the 31% that we'd seen last January. I think we're still seeing some increase, some gas left in that tank, whereas Snapchat, it's only a 2-point decline, 37 down to 35% in this latest sample, but that looks like it could be the beginnings of a decline. If I look across the full panel of social and digital apps that we tracked here, only 2 in 5 Gen Zs use Facebook on a daily basis. It's not the first time we've seen this in our data where the young end is not so interested in Facebook. And if you interview them, you'll find that many keep a Facebook account, but they post the things they might want their parents to see there, but it's not really where they congregate with their friends. Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all with stronger numbers there among Gen Z. Now, if I drill this up or divvy this up by TSL quartiles. Oh, wait, I'm off by one. Here's what happens. I wanted to point this out. Among the RPSES Gen Zs, remember it was 40% for Facebook among Gen Z in the wild, but among those who are likely to make it into the rating sample, they're just a little bit maybe squarer than their peers because 58% of them are using Facebook on a daily basis. And here's where I drilled it down by TSL quartiles to radio. And you'll note that when you get to the top quartile, an hour or more on a daily basis, you'll see that foundational four, the way we think of it, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, posting some really strong percentages. And frankly, if you take it this way, in the panel on the left, we're talking about daily usage of apps broken down by the RPSES ratings likelies, and that little sliver of RPS 60s, the RPSES ratings likelies who listen to broadcast radio at least an hour a day. And then in the panel on the right, we're talking about chronic or compulsive usage, where they say they're checking in 3 times a day or more. And those are numbers of nearly 50% or more for, again, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Google. Now, fear of missing out drives a lot of social media engagement here. I look at social media like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram because I fear missing out on things my friends, family, and coworkers are doing. You see among the ratings likelies, 64%. You see 73% among the RPS 60s, 70% among the RPS Gen Zs, 69% among the RPS millennials. But then there's the backside of that. In blue here, I often feel worse after looking at social media. 42% among the RPS 60s, 43% among the RPSES ratings likelies overall. You see the Gen Z number, that mammoth 62%, just suggesting to us that every time you've got a social media post that you're managing, make sure it's something that everybody feels good about rather than, oh my God, I missed that. They were having such fun. I should have been there. You need to reassure them that they'll be able to be there next time, that there's lots of good times to be had. Now, Apple with iOS 14.5 last year brought this from opt out to opt in. So some apps ask if they can track your activity across other companies' websites. They say your data will be used to show personalized ad. How often do you allow this tracking? Last summer, 37% said always or often. Now it's down to 31%. It's getting a little bit more specific. The good news, even as people are pulling back among the RPSES ratings likelies, those who are likely to be judging us, that's in our favor. They're nearly twice as likely to allow app location tracking always or often compared to the overall sample. So the folks most likely to allow access to their information are also the folks you need to influence most.
When iOS 14.5 was announced, we on the marketing side immediately wondered, how much this was going to affect our accountability to clients and the effectiveness of their campaigns. Thankfully, as you can see here, RPS yes folks index higher like they tend to do with everything, but this kind of data privacy importance is the trend that we're heading in. So how do we combat that? Well, instead of the third-party data that we've been relying on, we have to shift to first-party data. Your own data relationship with your listeners is one of the biggest upsides that radio has.
Now, social media makes up a huge slice of what our marketing department uses for client campaigns, but we have deep capabilities in other digital media, including OTT video placements, and as PJ mentioned, we've added outdoor capabilities as well. So in the past, we've always asked, how often do you notice things advertised on these different channels? And we script out what these things are. Direct mail meaning, pieces of mail delivered to your home by the US Postal Service, for example, but it's abbreviated here as direct mail. But as loath as I am to ever change wording, we wanted to get really specific about where are people paying attention to ads. So we changed the word notice to pay attention to. And you'll see that across the board, so answered on a 6-point scale, and these are the percentages saying all the time, which is a 6, 5, or 4. But in each case, the numbers dropped 10 to 15 points across the board. But that wasn't our mission here. We wanted to get really specific about who's paying attention. So here are the top 3 box answers from how often do you pay attention to things advertised on these platforms. The top 2 box, just 6 and 5, really driving in paying attention. And the numbers drop even further. But then we're going to put that through the ratings filter, the RPS yes group, and then we'll pay attention to the RPS 60s as well. In fact, you'll notice third from the bottom on the right here, radio among the RPS 60s, 3/4 of them say they pay attention to things advertised on the radio. These are the first people to hear new songs, new contests, new personalities, new things on your station. They're the very first people who are going to be influenced and pay attention. Now you'll note among those RPS 60s at the top of the ranking, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at 68%, outdoor at 62%. So we started wondering what happens if we use multimedia in a campaign? What kind of depth of reach might we get? So here we've pushed together, deduped, if you will, the foundational 4, Google, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, our billboard and outdoor capability, plus smartphone apps, because if you go through that geofenced area around one of those outdoor assets, we're going to be able to get to you there as well. And now instead of 36% across the total sample being the top percentage paying attention, now we're at 58% or 80% among the RPS yes ratings likelies and nearly 90% of the RPS 60s. So there's a whole lot about where to place. So what do you say? In the past few years, how often have any of these types of advertising messages caused you to tune in or listen more to a station? These are among regular AM/FM radio listeners, at least 15 minutes a week. Name of the song that's playing then, easy to do with digital media these days. The type of talk or music programming they specialize, sure, been doing that for decades. Times we're going commercial free. Sought after piece of programming, might as well try to get them, set the appointment. News station name or format. Now, you'll notice on the right side, cash contest. That seems maybe like lower than we might imagine, but there's a lot involved in that idea. And in fact, when we ask them to agree or disagree with these ideas, when I see an ad for a radio station advertising a cash contest, I usually tune in even if I don't participate in the game. Among the RPS yes ratings likelies, that's 75%. When I see an ad for a new station on a billboard or outdoor sign, I usually give it a try, 76% among the RPS yes ratings likelies, nearly 4 and 5 RPS 60s. And then just a note that we'll get deeper in about on contesting in just a little bit, but in black here, I won't bother with radio station contests unless the prize is $500 cash or more, 64% among the RPS yes ratings likelies. Now, the work from home accommodation brought about by the pandemic has subsided in many parts of the nation, hanging in just a few. These are numbers from across the range of PPM markets, but the important tale is what happens to radio listening when people are working from home as opposed to going to work. We ask them which best describes where you work, going to work outside my home or working outside my home most days and sometimes from home. We know there are people who are kind of stuck in this saddle where they're in the office or at the workplace sometimes, but sometimes working from home. If you aggregate mostly and only outside home, we're talking 66%, mostly or only from home, 22%. And things change up if we drill down into the RPSES ratings likelies. In blue, the RPSES ratings likelies overall. In pink, the RPS 60s. We're now 73% working mostly outside their home, 75% mostly outside their home, compared to 19% working mostly from home. And this is so incredibly important because even if I adjust these listening stats, what they listen to most while they're working outside or mostly from home, if you just take your attention, these are shown as a percentage of the working population within this sample, but that's 44% compared to 34% for anything else if you're working outside the home, where it's 12% either way among the RPS 60s if you're working from home or mostly from home. So it's about an even split there where we're far more likely to get to them if they're working outside the home. You're far more likely to be listening to radio.
RPS yes and RPS 60 folks over-index on everything except the table that you see on the right, which has got to tell you something. In short, the upside for positioning yourself as the quote unquote work from home radio station, it's just not very big. And as COVID restrictions ease across the country, it is unlikely that this is going to reverse course in the foreseeable future. It's all about getting to them through the commute and into their offices.
And in fact, again, that threshold of at least 30 minutes listening to AM FM radio on a typical day. If you work mostly from outside your home, you have a better chance of spending that kind of time with radio. It is almost tautological. So as we showed in the intro about ratings prospects, nearly all of those likely to participate in the ratings do so at least in part because of cash and prizes. So contesting can be a major tool. It works maybe it punches above its weight in terms of helping to promote your brands. So who's into contests right now? 34% across the total sample, about a quarter who used to still play contests, an additional 10% who've come aboard more recently. They didn't participate before, but they do now. Maybe it was a contest they'd heard recently, or maybe they're just hoping that they can win $1,000 because that might help in some other place. But you'll notice that 34% rises to over half among the RPSES ratings likelies, and it rises to 3 and 5 among the RPS 60s. And in fact, compare those percentages with what happens when we ask them, when was the last time you participated in a radio station contest or sweepstakes? Among regular AM/FM listeners, we're up over 50% of the RPSES ratings likelies who say they've done that in the past month, and 60% of the RPS 60s. So how much does it have to be? Does $500 still work? Well, we've learned in previous studies that yes, some contest actives really do shop around for the most generous contests. So how much do you have to say you're giving away? For starters, it needs to be competitive among stations with whom you share a lot of audience. But I can recall talking through data we gathered years ago on this topic and seeing a relatively small delta between $500 and $1,000. But that delta is now about 20 points among the station group or among the groups here.
We on the marketing side spent a good couple of years treating $500 the same as $1,000 because that gap was so small before. $1,000 still won, but the upside of being able to double the number of occasions that you could give away money while utilizing the same budget was a great win for a lot of clients. But as we saw last summer, and as we're starting to see even more here today, we simply can't in good conscience treat them the same now.
We tried to get these respondents to pick one of these radio station contest mechanisms as being most attractive to them. Text in to win, it leads by a point overall. It ties among the RPSES ratings likelies with register to win and then listen for your name, register online and then listen, kind of name game mechanism, or call in to win, which may be a little harder for some people, but it doesn't change the numbers very much. 39 compared to 36% overall, or 69 compared to 67% among the RPSES ratings likelies. They won't decide it for us, is the simple shorthand. You have to use the mechanism that's going to best meet your goals and best fits the stationality of the brand where you're employing a contest. We had a pretty good insight based on last summer's study that $1,000 would be likely as the most desirable prize to more people. And so we divvied up a whole bunch of different ways that maybe you could package $1,000 of contest cash. Among the contest actives, bill paying, absolutely at the top, but generally speaking, across the RPS yes ratings likelies or the heavy TSL RPS 60s, free gas, commercial free cash, tying a music quantity statement, a music quantity thing with the money, those all have legs for them and all have some big followings. And here we divvy it up generationally. You see the idea of commercial free cash connects with the RPS yes Gen Zs, and otherwise pretty flat across those three ideas. And because I couldn't find much difference there, here we've put it through the lens of format P1 groups, so that's RPS CHR P1s, hip hop urban P1s, AC and hot AC P1s swept into one bucket here, along with the rock and alt P1s in the next column, pushed together. Library format P1s among the RPS yes ratings likelies, meaning classic hits, classic rock, 80s, jack formats, etc. And then country P1s, they're on the right side of this page. RPS country P1s, pay my bills, please. Commercial free cash for many of the others. A nearly cash-like gift card, that did it for the hot AC and AC P1s. Free gas, commercial free cash, absolutely rang the bell for the CHR P1s. Now I want to call your attention to something we've been looking at for quite a while. The perception that most radio station contests are rigged. They never really give away the prizes. Among the ratings likelies, 59%, better than 3 and 5 of the RPS 60s. Gen Z's at 52% overall, 50% of the millennials. And face it, if you think the contest isn't legit or they're not really going to give away the prize, then you're a lot less likely to play along or to consider tossing in, listening at the appointed times or trying to call in or trying to send in a text. So we asked them those who were skeptical, what we could do to overcome contest skepticism. And PJ, I know you'd taken note of the number one answer here.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at it. Be honest about where the winner lives, even if that's not the same city as the radio station. They care more about knowing that it was given away than they do about who it was given away to, or even if they're in the same town. So transparency, honesty, authenticity, that's the trend. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to trumpet national contest winners being from another city, but radio in general needs to celebrate all of our winners more.
Absolutely. So compare these pairs of columns. I've got the total sample next to the RPS yes ratings likelies. In that panel on the left, when was the last time you joined a radio station VIP or frequent listener club? Shorthanded here, join station list. You'll see about 31% of the total sample, where it's up over 50% among the ratings likelies. Call the station for any reason. About a third of the total sample and well over half of the ratings likelies. Liked, commented, or shared a station social media post. A little bit under 40% among the total sample and well over 60% among the RPS yes ratings likelies. We used to get really skeptical about people who would show up in the station lobby to pick up a prize and contest big. Well, in fact, this could easily be somebody who is now or will be in the future within the rating sample. So we need to treat them like VIPs. If they take the time to call the station, make sure they get an answer. Make sure they know we care about them. If they take the time to comment on a social media post, turn it around and make them feel good, even if you have to tell them that, sadly, we can't play this particular artist who you adore because, from what we can tell, not enough of your friends like that artist or other listeners. But try to treat them with courtesy and take them seriously every time you possibly can. So last section here, some in radio worry about losing ground on music discovery. Many of us worry about music station on-air talent being the benefit that really really gets people to turn to your station. And we all worry about listeners tuning out. So let me show you the numbers. Over half place some importance on new music. We asked it to them on a 6-point scale, extremely important to not important at all. 20% overall say it's extremely important, another 18%. 1 point behind that, the 5-point here. pretty important. Heading for the middle, but still above the mean, we're talking 20% who rated it a 4. So we can say that over half, in fact, that would total up at 58%, place some importance on new music. And you'll see how it shifts around through the demos. Gen Z's maybe a little pickier about it. Gen X, a little less concerned with new music. And you'll see how it plays out across the music format P1 groups here. I will venture to say that while that's 50% in the top 2 box category for the ACP ones in the middle of the page, which is more than the 40% for the hot ACP ones, those mostly female ACP ones are probably thinking about, oh, I don't know, that brand new song Uptown Funk, which they're really enjoying. Maybe that's a little bit too cynical, but you get the point where the hot AC listeners, maybe if they're thinking about Silk Sonic or something newer. Now, radio actually leads for music discovery among these top 3 box new music seekers, those who said new music was a 4, 5, or 6 on our 6-point scale. And over there on the column on the right, we've got the top 2 boxes. You'll see that radio stations, 3rd overall, and definitely in the fray among millennials, at the top among Gen X, but among Gen Z, not 3rd, not 4th, not 5th, not 6th. It goes back quite a ways for that group of people. Now, among RPSES ratings likelies, well, of course we're doing fine. We tie YouTube overall, and among the heavy listening RPS 60s, we're at 82%. If they're concerned about new music, they know where to get it. And again, as we'd shown you, as it applied to the RPSES ratings likelies who were Gen Z, they were more likely to use Facebook than the rest of the Gen Zs, and these are also more likely to think of AM/FM radio stations as a source of music discovery. What about the hosts? Would you say you listen to local AM/FM radio stations just for the music? In yellow at the bottom, 56% overall, 51% among the RPSES ratings likelies, mostly for the music, but the DJs and hosts are entertaining. In green, equally for the music and the hosts. In light blue and in dark blue, that's a point or two, mainly for the DJs and hosts across the total sample or among the ratings likelies. Now, it does vary around by format P1 groups. And look at the hot AC and ACP ones. AC in particular, it's just 40% who say it's just the music. Maybe they can't name that host. They don't know much about them, but they know that they're there every day and it's a comforting voice and it's great companionship. It's just about relating correctly to the audience. Now, I would say that getting people to smile at something they've heard on the radio is a pretty low bar. And in fact, among the ratings likelies, radio does very, very well with that. Within the past week, 2/3 of the ratings likelies. Among the heavy TSL RPS 60s, nearly 4 in 5, and another 7% on the top for in the past month. There are 16% additional among the RPSES ratings likelies. It does vary around among music format P1s, but I think that's something that we should always set at a bar with everything other, along with the music that we put on a music radio station, should hopefully have the opportunity to make some listener or another smile. And finally, what gets them to tune out? How often have these things cause you to tune out or to change stations? They're ranked by the total sample, those numbers, the bars here in yellow. In blue, the RPSES ratings likelies, and those numbers vary around a little bit. But at the top, commercial breaks that come too frequently, commercial breaks that last too long, too many bad songs, same commercials repeated too often. Too much talk about subjects that don't interest me. Songs repeated multiple times in just a few hours, vertical repetition problems, jokes, bit sketches that missed the mark. Songs that all sound the same. If you don't like one Bruno Mars song, you probably won't like the other ones. Songs repeated at the same time from one day to another. Horizontal repetition problems. And you'll note down here at the bottom, burned out songs are actually a greater source of tune out than maybe new or unfamiliar songs that they haven't gotten used to yet. Now, these are largely the things that we fret about on a daily basis or maybe all night long among radio programmers. And it turns out we're paying attention to a lot of the right things.
Well, thanks to everyone that has already submitted questions. If you have any and haven't had a chance to get them to us, there's an option right in your GoToWebinar control panel in order to ask them, which Jake is gathering on our behalf. As we mentioned at the top, this was a nationwide sample and a rather large undertaking. We find a lot of commonalities in individual markets in terms of, ratings prospects over-indexing compared to the total, which ad channels they pay attention to, et cetera. There is an opportunity, though, to find the exact answers for your market, audience, and demo through our ASAP studies, where you can ask some of the same questions that we asked here. It's part of our suite of quick turn research products. If you would ever like to know more about any of those, you can hit us at tellmemore@nuvoodoo.com. On to your questions. Jake?
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. The first question is, you mentioned the need to shift to first-party data. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Sure. Radio has a very well-established relationship with its audience. Most stations rely on their stream and app in order to generate listening and ratings, which, by the way, is why we always advocate for total line reporting from a ratings perspective, especially. Because of all that, they are already giving you data in order to listen. Google is going to eventually stop tracking third-party cookies. iOS now defaults in favor of user privacy. So radio's advantage is going to be that prior relationship and the likelihood that they will opt into your content. So that gives you an advantage when it comes to marketing to them and people that look like them from a data standpoint. And it's not just that data, people who have engaged with your social content. It's listener and winner databases like VIP clubs and email lists, et cetera. You've already got a ton of this data, and you need to be focused on building on that, both in terms of how you collect the data, but also how you plan on using it to your advantage through things like marketing, for example. So a first-party data strategy is absolutely vital.
Great, thanks. Next question is, with the importance of baby boomers and persons over 55, why does our study stop at age 54?
Pretty simply because I have yet to talk to a radio station manager who's saying, we really want to, interview a lot of people over, who are 55 plus. I am personally a baby boomer and 55 plus. And I think the advertising business misses influencing people by not targeting baby boomers for general market products and services. But the fact of the matter is I don't think we've conducted any station focused market study in years where we went above 54 years of age. And in fact, I can tell you that even for library format stations, we frequently have clients that say, yeah, let's cut the sample off at 53 or so, because we don't want somebody who's just about to, turn 54 and then turn 55 in a year, and they won't matter to us anymore.
Great. Next question is maybe just to refresh this person's memory. What does RPS 60 mean?
RPS 60 is our RPS yes group, those who model through is likely to end up within one of the Nielsen samples. And then 60 means they listen at least 60 minutes, at least an hour per day. They end up being just 7% of the sample, but they move AQH and TSL around at a mammoth level. So we pay close attention to their preferences.
Great. Couple more here. Next question is, if the commute is so important, does that mean it's better to just put all our marketing money into outdoor?
Well, it depends on how you use it. I mean, I can only speak as to how we manage campaigns. We've always touted that being in more channels than one is kind of one of those marketing 101 things that's, it's better to do that than to just be in a single channel. But it's really about how they work together. Just as an example, we love big roadside displays for radio when it comes to out of home, especially knowing how entrenched we are in people's commutes. But you can also incorporate lifestyle displays to go after, specific audience groups like an AC station, in using elevator displays within office buildings in order to get them to tune in at work, and then we can turn around and get them on the way home, say around their grocery stores through digital sidewalk kiosks at night, or around a popular event center on the weekend. And that's just outdoor. All those examples capture devices so that we can retarget them when they're on their phones and computers, and when they're not out and are at home. Maybe we're also focused on connected TV and over the top, so we can reach them with creative when they're winding down for the day. The point is, it's not just about combining these assets. It's about combining them in a way that matches the lifestyle of your audience, so that every dollar that you spend has an impact.
Great. And last question here is, are personalities less important than in your last study?
Well, sadly, I felt like we needed to change up the wording from last study, so I didn't show a trend here. But what I'd tell you is that as people have resumed working outside the home. We're less homebound than we were, that we're spending more time in cars and more time with the radio. I'd say all told that personality showed up a little bit better than they did in our June study.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your questions.
And thank you so much for joining us today. If you happen to miss any of today's presentation, a recording of it's going to be sent to your email within the next 24 hours, and it's available anytime at nuvoodoo.com/webinars. If there are any specific questions we didn't get to today or that you think of after this is all concluded, you can reach out to us at tellmemore@nuvoodoo.com. On behalf of Lee and Jake and the entire NuVoodoo team, thanks again and have a great rest of your day.